Bibi Zainab, the Prophet's granddaughter, was characterized by a personality that combined all the high moral standards and the honorable tendencies, and, accordingly, she has been the best exemplar of honor, chastity, and dignity in addition to every virtue of human perfection. She had inherited the highest principles of charity, including deep-rooted faith and trust in Almighty Allah in the most perfect manner, from her parents and grandparents. This is the story of a unique woman whose own fate was bound with the historical events of Karbala that have impressed upon mankind the true reality of living Islam. It was on the plains of Karbala that the conflict between Imam Husain al-Islam and the pretender to the caliphate, Yazid ibn Muawiyah, was waged in battle. Imam Husain had steadfastly refused to pay homage to Yazid and acknowledge him as a leader of the Muslim world. It was no secret that Yazid flaunted the laws of Islam and even publicly derided its beliefs. His claim to the caliphate bore no legitimacy or acceptability in the eyes of Imam Husain al-Islam. This story unfolds through the life of Zainab Kubra, granddaughter of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, daughter of Hazrat Fatima and Imam Ali alayhi salam. From what we know of her actions and speeches, it is clear that in her was reflected the divine prophetic light that was her heritage. It was 5 years after the Muslims had accompanied the Prophet ﷺ and his family in the migration to Medina, when the Holy Prophet's daughter, Hazrat Fatima alayhi salam, gave birth to a little girl. When her father, Imam Ali alayhi salam, saw his daughter for the first time, Imam Husain alayhi salam, who was then almost 3 years old, was with him. The boy exclaimed in delight, "Oh father, Allah has given me a sister." At those words, Imam Ali alayhi salam began to weep, and when Husain alayhi salam asked why he was doing so, his father answered that he would soon come to know. Fatima alayhi salam and Ali alayhi salam did not name their child until a few days after her birth, for they awaited the Prophet's return from a journey so that he could propose the name. When finally the baby girl was brought before him, he held her in his lap and kissed her. The angel Jibreel came to him and conveyed the name that was to be hers, and then he began to weep. The Prophet ﷺ asked why Jibreel wept, and he answered, "O Prophet of Allah, from early on in life this girl will remain entangled in tribulations and trials in this world. First, she will weep over your separation from this world. Thereafter, she will bemoan the loss of her father and her mother, and then her brother Hassan. After all this, she will be confronted with the trials of the land of Karbala and the tribulations of that lonely desert, as a result of which her hair will turn grey and her back will be bent." When the members of the family heard this prophecy, they all broke down in tears. Imam Husain alayhi salam now understood why earlier his father had also wept. Then the Prophet ﷺ named her Zainab alayhi salam. When the news of Zainab's birth reached Salman al-Farsi, he went to Ali alayhi salam to congratulate him, but instead of seeing him happy and rejoicing, he saw Ali alayhi salam shed tears, and he too was apprised by the events of Karbala and the hardships that were to befall Zainab alayhi salam. On the night before Friday, the 19th of Ramzan, in the 40th year after Hijrah, Imam Ali alayhi salam went to the central mosque for prayers. Shortly after the azan, Zainab alayhi salam heard a heart-rending cry. Soon the cries came nearer to her house, and she realized that they were bringing her the news of her father's assassination. Ibn Muljam had struck Imam Ali alayhi salam a fatal blow while he was in the defenseless state of sajda. Mortally wounded, he was carried back home on the shoulders of his followers. Some 10 years later, Zainab alayhi salam was once again stricken with grievous loss, that of her brother Imam Hassan alayhi salam. He too fell victim to the schemes of the power-hungry Bani Umayyah. When Zainab learnt of her brother's proposed journey to Kufa, she begged her husband to give her leave to accompany her brother. Abdullah pointed out that such a journey was fraught with difficulties and hardship. Zainab alayhi salam insisted, saying, "My mother did not leave me behind to watch from afar as recreation the day when my brother is all alone, surrounded by enemies with no friend or supporter." She then left with her 2 sons. When Bibi Zainab's journey alongside Imam Husain alayhi salam led them to the outskirts of Kufa, on the eve of the 10th day of Muharram, Imam Husain alayhi salam addressed his followers, the Ansar and the Bani Hashims. It had become clear that this was to be a battle unto death. He therefore released them from any obligation to remain by his side, and let them know that no grudge would be held against them if they were to turn away from the coming decisive battle and return to safety. There was now no doubt about the slaughter that was to come. Despite the heavy burden of knowing this fact, Bibi Zainab alayhi salam maintained her tranquility through constant prayer and remembrance of the ultimate cause for which their lives were being sacrificed. The 10th day of Muharram, Ashura, dawned. Before going into battle, Imam Husain alayhi salam went into the tent of his son, Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, who was ill, too weak to join his father in battle. He was being tended to by his aunt, Bibi Zainab alayhi salam. Imam Husain alayhi salam bade him farewell, saying, "My son, you are the best and purest of my children. After me, you will be my successor and deputy. Take care of these women and children during captivity and the rigors of travel. Console them. My son, convey to my friends my salam, and tell them that their imam has been killed away from his home, and that they should mourn for me." That same day, Bibi Zainab alayhi salam brought to him her two sons, Own and Muhammad, and said to him, "O my brother, if women were permitted to fight, I would have courted death to save you. But it is not allowed. Accept, therefore, the sacrifice of my two sons." The bloody battle raged all day. One by one, Imam Husain's son, kinsmen, and supporters were butchered on the battlefield. When Bibi Zainab's sons were killed, she bore their death with fortitude. Their enemies did not even give them access to any water that might soothe their parched throats. Their water supplies had long since been finished. When the Imam was taking his final leave of the ladies, Bibi Zainab alayhi salam asked that he try to get a little water for his dehydrated infant son, Imam Ali Asghar alayhi salam. The Imam took him in his arms and went to beseech Umar ibn Sa'ad for water for the innocent child, but his request fell on deaf ears and stone hearts. Instead, an arrow pierced the child's neck, killing him instantly. Imam Husain alayhi salam returned with the child still in his arms, himself splattered with his son's blood. Bibi Zainab alayhi salam took the small corpse from her brother and, pressing it close to her chest, lamented pitifully the heavy toll on life that the injustices of the enemy extracted. The fateful day wore on. Imam Husain alayhi salam was wounded so many times until eventually he fell off his horse. His enemies surrounded him and attacked him with swords and spears. When Bibi alayhi salam saw his agony from her tent door, she went onto the field of battle, and approaching the Imam, she said, "O my brother, my master, would that the sky fell down on the earth and the mountains toppled on the ground." Then Bibi Zainab addressed the others of the army. "Is there no Muslim among you who could help the grandson of the Prophet of Allah?" And then the fighting came to an end. 73 brave men had faced 4,000, and after the bloody encounter was over, none of the Imam's supporters were left alive. The Imam's body was trampled by the enemy's horses, his head was severed, and even his tattered cloth, with which he had hoped to preserve his modesty, was snatched off him. At the moment of the Imam's death, Hazrat Jibreel proclaimed, "Beware, Husain has been murdered in Karbala." Upon hearing this, Bibi Zainab alayhi salam rushed to Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam and told him about the tragedy that had just occurred. Now the enemy came to the women's tents. Umar ibn Sa'ad gave the order to loot. Barging in, they plundered what they could and set the tents on fire. They beat the women with their swords and snatched away their veils. Imam Zain al-Abidin's bedding was ripped from beneath him, and he was left lying feeble, weak, and unable to move. Both Bibi Sakina's and Bibi Fatma's earrings were wrenched from the ears, making them bleed. While the tents burned away, Bibi Zainab alayhi salam gathered the young woman and went to find Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam. The next day, the members of the Prophet's family were made to leave for Kufa to be presented to Ibn Ziyad. They arrived at Kufa. Bibi Zainab alayhi salam stood her ground and spoke of the terrors she had witnessed. She also addressed the crowds that Allah would punish them and is always watching them. This made a few come back to reality, but it was too late now. Chains were secured onto Bibi Zainab and her fellow captives, and when Yazid believed they had been humiliated adequately, he allowed them to leave. When time came to leave Karbala, Bibi Zainab alayhi salam wanted to remain near her brother's grave till the day of her death. Bibi Zainab went straight to the grave of the Holy Prophet, where she prayed and told him of the massacre of his beloved grandson. She had returned altered, her hair white and her back bent. She did not live long after the torturous trials she had to bear. Her destiny to proclaim to the world the sacrifices made by Imam Husain and the other members of the family of the Holy Prophet for the cause of Islam. She exposed the evil deeds of Ibn Ziyad and Yazid with courage and bravery. Had it not been for her, the sacrifice of Karbala might have faded into oblivion.